I'm Gabriel Reed, and if anyone had asked me a month ago what felt most certain in my life, I would have said, my wedding to Stella Parker. Back then, everything was nearly done. The venue was booked, the deposit had been paid, and the guest list only had a few names left to confirm. The wedding invitations sat in a cream-colored box on the dining table, waiting for Stella to choose the font one last time. Her mother, Amelia Ross, had once called me just to say she dreamed of Stella walking down the aisle. And Ryan Kelly, her father, had clapped me on the shoulder during a family dinner and said, "She chose the right man." I believed that. I believed Stella wasn't the kind of love that kept you awake at night with doubt. She was the person who made me want to buy better insurance, renovate the kitchen, and put both our names on every long-term plan. I used to think that was what grown-up love looked like. Fewer flowery promises, more appointments, bills, contracts, and peaceful evenings. That night, I was sitting at my desk, checking an email from the venue. Daisy Perry, the event manager, had just sent over confirmation of the menu and the next payment schedule. I was reading the line about fresh flower costs when my phone lit up. A message from Stella. I opened it, and the small world I'd been building collapsed in silence. It was a selfie. Stella was standing in a bar, red and blue lights washing over her face. She was pressed close to a man I'd never seen before, his hand low on her back, and she was smiling in a way I knew very well. Deliberately beautiful, deliberately confident, deliberately cruel. Under the photo, there was only one word. Upgraded. I stared at that word longer than I stared at the other man's face. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't a drunken message sent to the wrong person. It wasn't a thoughtless moment. Stella wanted me to see it. She wanted me to understand that in her version of the story, I had just been replaced, and she still had enough pride to give that betrayal a name. The worst part wasn't that she was with someone else. The worst part was that she had chosen to make me the audience to my own humiliation. I set the phone down, my hands going cold. One sentence rang through my mind, so clear and sharp it almost sounded unfamiliar to me. If you want to turn me into a joke, Stella, at least I won't volunteer to stand on that stage. I didn't call her. I didn't text asking, why? I didn't beg for some cheap explanation, either. I took a screenshot, saved the time, the account it came from, and the caption. Then I sent that photo to Amelia Ross and Ryan Kelly. My message was so brief it was almost polite. I think you both need to know why the wedding may not be happening. After that, I forwarded the photo to Daisy Perry at the venue, asking her to pause the entire preparation process and not process any further payments without direct confirmation from me. I typed every word slowly, because if my hands started shaking, I was afraid I'd write something that would give Stella the right to call me unstable. Within minutes, my phone started exploding. Stella called over and over. Her name appeared, disappeared, then appeared again, like a relentless mockery. Amelia texted, "Gabriel, what is going on?" Ryan's message was shorter, heavier. "Call me back right now." I sent the photo to Violet Bennett, my best friend. She called almost immediately, her voice not panicked, but tight as a pulled wire. "Gabriel, listen to me. Keep everything in writing. Don't let her drag you into an argument over the phone." I said nothing. Violet continued, slower this time, as if she was afraid I was standing too close to the edge of a cliff. "If it hurts, let it hurt. But don't let her turn your pain into evidence against you." That sentence held me in place. I turned my phone face down on the desk when Stella called for the 12th time. I decided I wouldn't answer her until I knew the whole truth. Then Daisy Perry's reply appeared in my inbox. I opened it, and the first line sent a chill down my spine. "Gabriel, I'm very sorry to have to ask this, but before your email, Stella Parker contacted us to request that the groom's name be changed on the wedding contract." I called Daisy Perry right after sending the email, temporarily canceling any additional charges from the venue. My fingers had gone cold against the phone screen, but when I spoke, my voice was so calm it almost startled me. Daisy, this is Gabriel Reed. I need to confirm some information related to the wedding contract for Stella Parker and me. On the other end of the line, Daisy was silent for a few seconds. She was our event coordinator, always gentle, always professional, but this time the caution was clear in every breath she took. Gabriel, I understand the situation may be sensitive. I can only share what directly relates to the contract and the parties listed in the file. I'm one of the two people listed, I said, and I need to know whether Stella has requested any recent changes. Daisy didn't answer right away. I heard papers being turned, the soft tapping of a keyboard, and then she lowered her voice. Stella came to the venue 3 days ago. She wasn't alone. I stared at the wall in front of me. The note Stella had stuck there last week was still hanging on it, reminding me to choose the song for our first dance. Who was she with? A man named Owen Stewart. The name dropped into the room like something heavy. Not because I had never heard of him. In the selfie, Stella was leaning against a strange man's shoulder, her smile bright, the word, upgraded, written across it like a knife made of contempt. Now that man had a name, a face, footsteps that had crossed into the place where I was supposed to stand beside her on our wedding day. Daisy continued, more slowly now, as if every sentence had to be weighed before she said it. Stella introduced Owen as a more suitable replacement. I'm sorry, Gabriel. I thought it was a terrible joke, or that the two of you were dealing with something private. But she asked us to see whether we could adjust the wedding reception layout if the groom's name changed close to the date. I closed my eyes. My heart wasn't breaking loudly anymore. It was cracking in small, deep, cold lines. What did she ask about? Place cards, the seating chart, the bride and groom's introduction. She also asked how long it would take if the name had to be changed on printed materials, and whether our team could handle it discreetly before the guests found out. Discreetly. The word caught in my throat. Stella hadn't been drunk. She hadn't acted on impulse. She hadn't accidentally sent a photo during some stupid pre-wedding rebellion. She had walked into the venue on steady feet, brought another man with her, and asked how to remove me from the very wedding I had helped pay for. I drew in a long breath. Daisy, I don't want to put you in a difficult position, but I need everything in writing. The changes Stella requested were the date and time, the basic details. If any of it falls under the contract, please send it to my email. All right? Daisy replied. I'll send whatever I'm legally able to share. Gabriel, I'm truly sorry. So am I. When the call ended, I didn't throw my phone. I didn't call Stella back to curse her out. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, and named it Wedding Records. I dragged the screenshot into it. Then the email canceled additional charges, the deposit receipt, the messages from the venue, a time-stamped note about my call with Daisy. I used to think evidence was something people used to win lawsuits. That day, I understood that sometimes evidence is the rope that keeps a person from being forced by the whole world to doubt their own pain. I didn't need to win an argument. I needed the truth to stand upright when everyone started trying to twist it. My phone rang just as the first email from Daisy appeared. Stella Parker's name lit up on the screen. I let it ring until the fourth tone before answering. Are you insane? Stella's voice slammed straight into my ear. Why did you send that picture to my parents? Are you trying to destroy me? I looked at the email Daisy had just sent, the line confirming that Stella had come to the venue with Owen Stewart still open on my screen. No, Stella, I said. The caption, upgraded, told the story for you. I just sent it to the right audience. The one you forgot to invite. She let out a harsh laugh, the kind of laugh I had never heard from her in the 3 years we had been together. It was just a photo, a stupid joke. You're turning it into a catastrophe because your ego got bruised. A joke you brought Owen to the venue for, to ask how to change the groom's name. Stella's silence came so fast I could hear my own breathing in the room. Then she spoke, quieter, sharper. Daisy told you. Are you worried about who told me, or worried that I know? Gabriel, you don't understand. Then explain it. She didn't explain. She only breathed hard, as if she were calculating which parts of the truth could still be trimmed down enough for me to swallow. In that moment, I realized Stella wasn't panicking because she had hurt me. She was panicking because her plan was no longer in the dark. A second email from Daisy appeared. I opened it while Stella was still on the line. The venue deposit had been paid from the joint account belonging to Gabriel Reed and Stella Parker. But the requests to change the groom's name, adjust the layout, and ask about a refund if the primary signing party changed. All of them had come from Stella's personal email. I read each line, and the anger in me didn't flare like fire. It sealed over like ice. You used our joint money to prepare a wedding without me, I said. Stella fell silent again. This time, the silence sounded like a confession. A message from Violet Bennett popped up on my screen right after that. You need to stop all payments immediately. This isn't just emotional anymore. I was about to reply when another message cut in from Amelia Ross. Gabriel, don't cancel yet. You don't know who Owen really is. The doorbell rang just as I finished printing the email Daisy Perry had sent back. The sound cut through the quiet apartment like a knock against my chest. I looked through the peephole and saw Amelia Ross standing close to the door, both hands clutching her handbag against her stomach. Beside her, Ryan Kelly's jaw was clenched tight, his face flushed with anger or shame. I couldn't tell which. I opened the door. Amelia looked at me as if she wanted to apologize, but Ryan stepped in first, his voice hard as stone. One photo isn't enough to call off a wedding, Gabriel. I shut the door behind them. On the dining table, the cream-colored box of wedding invitations was still sitting there beside my open laptop, and the pages I had just printed. I hadn't put them away. Maybe I wanted them to see the future their daughter had thrown onto the floor with one word. Upgraded. I answered more slowly than I expected. Right. One photo isn't. But one photo, plus the venue, plus emails, plus another man. That's enough. Amelia trembled. She pulled out a chair and sat down, her eyes fixed on the laptop screen. Gabriel, could there be some kind of misunderstanding? Stella can be impulsive sometimes. She likes attention. But she isn't cruel. I had wanted to believe that more than anyone. I turned the laptop toward them. First came the original selfie. Stella was leaning against Owen Stewart's shoulder, her lips curved in a smile, her eyes staring straight into the camera as if she were daring me. The caption, upgraded, sat right beneath it, brief, clean, merciless. Then I opened Daisy's email. Line after line confirmed that Stella had asked about changing the name of the guest of honor, adjusting the reception table layout, and even requesting that the deposit remain in place despite private adjustments on the bride's side. Ryan leaned down to read, and the anger on his face began shifting into an ugly kind of stunned silence. There are a few strange payments from our joint account too, I said, opening the transaction history. Not large enough to draw attention, but steady enough that they weren't random. Amelia lifted a hand to her mouth. I didn't stop. Some things, once dragged into the light, can't be covered back up with pity. I took the old tablet out of the desk drawer. It had once synced with the family account, Stell, and I had shared it while planning the wedding. A few messages were still there, scattered, incomplete, but sharp enough to cut. One message appeared. Gabriel is too safe, too predictable. Sometimes I want to know if he even knows how to get jealous, or if all he knows how to be is decent. Another was shorter. If he doesn't react, I'll know I chose wrong. Amelia went pale, as if the blood had drained from her skin. She read the 2 lines again, her lips moving without sound. Ryan stood motionless behind her. In his eyes, I saw something heavier than anger. The realization that his own daughter had dragged him onto a humiliating stage without him ever knowing his part. She asked me. Amelia said very softly, as if confessing to herself more than to me. She asked what a family would do if someone changed their mind right before the wedding. I thought she was stressed. I thought every bride was like that. Ryan slammed his hand down on the table, knocking the lid off the box of invitations. A few cards slid out. She let the whole family prepare for a wedding built on a lie. He said, his voice hoarse. Let her mother call every relative. Let me answer every congratulations. Let you stand here like a fool in front of everyone. I looked at the invitation scattered across the table, my name and Stella's printed side by side. So beautiful it felt insulting. Ryan pulled out his phone and called Stella right in front of me. The call rang and rang. No one answered. He called again. Still nothing but a silence stretched so tight it was hard to breathe. That was when I understood that Stella's silence over the past few months hadn't been peace. It had been a locked room where she kept plans I was never allowed to know about. And now, in a bitter twist, I was the only one holding the map to the collapse. My phone vibrated. Henry Davis's name appeared on the screen. I answered and put him on speaker, because Ryan was still looking at me as if waiting for the final missing piece. Gabriel. Henry said urgently. You just texted me the name Owen Stewart, right? Yeah. You know him? There was a pause on the other end. I've heard that name before in an internal ethics complaint connected to Stella's company. And it wasn't harmless gossip. Owen isn't some random guy she met at a bar. Amelia's head snapped up. Henry continued, his voice dropping lower. He tends to show up around women with status or stable finances. Charming, good listener, says exactly what they want to hear. Then things start getting messy. Money, relationships, reputations. Don't meet him alone. And from now on, keep everything clearly documented. I tightened my grip on the phone, a cold feeling running down my spine. Henry, do you have anything concrete? I'm sending you a file. Read it carefully before Stella gets a chance to spin the story. The call ended, and my screen lit up with a new email. The attachment name appeared clearly. Owen Stewart. Pre-marriage warning. Underneath it was Henry's message. Read it carefully before Stella gets a chance to spin the story. After Amelia Ross and Ryan Kelly left the apartment, I thought I would have a few minutes to breathe. But my phone buzzed almost immediately. A message from Henry Davis appeared on the screen, short enough to send a chill down my spine. I'm sending you a file. Read it before you talk to Stella, and don't transfer money to anyone. I opened my laptop. The file Henry sent wasn't an official accusation, nor was it the kind of document that could drag someone into court right away. It felt more like a collection of broken pieces that people only dared pass around after they had already paid the price. Owen Stewart's name appeared in multiple notes, multiple screenshots, and multiple scattered accounts from different women. Nothing was overly dramatic like in the movies. No gangs, no grand conspiracy. That was exactly what made me feel colder. Owen wasn't the kind of villain standing in the shadows. He was the ordinary kind of dangerous man people found easy to trust. Charming with his words, knowing exactly where to place a compliment, knowing when to listen, knowing how to turn someone else's insecurity into a door he could walk through. One woman wrote that Owen had once encouraged her to leave her fiancé because she deserved someone who saw her true value. After that, he borrowed money from her to invest in a small media project. Another said Owen promised to help her build her personal brand, then used her credit card to book events, studios, hotels, all under the name of investing in the future. Someone didn't accuse him at all, just wrote one sentence. I was too ashamed to tell anyone I had been conned with compliments. I sat frozen in front of the screen. The anger I felt toward Stella was still there, thick in my throat. But beneath it, another feeling crept in, far more unpleasant. Stella had betrayed me. She had used a selfie to spit straight onto my dignity. But maybe she was also being led by her own arrogance and hunger for recognition into a trap she wasn't clear-headed enough to see. I had just scrolled to the bottom of the file when the doorbell rang. This time, I didn't need to look through the peephole to know who it was. Stella Parker stood in the hallway, eyes red, hair disheveled, her phone gripped tightly in her hand like a weapon. The moment the door opened, she stepped inside, her voice cracking with fury. Delete it. Now. I stood in the entryway, blocking her path. Delete what? Don't play dumb with me, Gabriel. The screenshot. The email. Everything you sent to my parents and the venue. You turned me into a monster over one caption. I looked at her, at the woman I had thought, just days earlier, would stand beside me and read wedding vows. The person in front of me now wasn't a bride trembling with remorse. She was furious because she had lost control of the story. I didn't turn you into anything, I said. I just stopped blocking the light so you could stand in the dark. Stella let out a dry laugh. You're enjoying this, aren't you? You want my parents to hate me. You want everyone to think I'm a cheater. I want to know why Owen Stewart was added to the venue file. The smile vanished from her face. I walked to the table and set my hand on the stack of papers Daisy Perry had sent. Don't twist this into a story about me humiliating you. You brought another man into a space that was supposed to belong to your fiancé. You used a private email to request access changes. You used our joint account to hold deposits I also contributed to. And now you come here demanding that I apologize. Stella's breathing turned sharp. I just wanted to know if you still cared. That made me laugh, but there was no humor in it at all. By sending me a photo of you leaning against another man and writing, "Upgraded?" You're always calm, she said, her voice rising. You always act like everything can be solved with a spreadsheet, an email, or a phone call. I wanted to see you jealous. I wanted to see you fight for me. Betrayal didn't start with the photo, Stella. I heard my own voice grow heavier with each word. It started when you prepared an exit behind my back. It started when you let Owen walk into our wedding plans. It started when you decided my pain was proof of your value. She pressed her lips together, but her eyes began to waver. I took another step closer. If you need me to be humiliated to feel loved, then you're not looking for a husband. You're looking for an audience. Stella looked as if she had been slapped. Her face went pale, the anger falling from her eyes for one brief moment, and revealing something more fragile, more panicked underneath. But she still tried to cling to the last piece of victory she had. You don't understand, she said. Quieter now. Owen said. Owen said this could become a big story, that I shouldn't be trapped in the image of the good girl marrying the safe man. He said people would love a woman who dared to choose the right person at the last minute. I went still. Stella realized she had said too much. She quickly turned her face away, but the words had already spilled out. He said it would be a transformation. She continued, her voice shaking more now. A viral story. The bride is upgrading her life. A video, a few posts, a few small interviews. He told me I had an appeal. I just didn't know how to use it yet. The word, upgraded, suddenly stopped being a spontaneous knife to the gut. It was a title, a slogan, A poster for a performance where I had been cast as the man left behind, the pathetic one. The loser who had to exist so she could shine. I looked at the woman in front of me and felt the last part of me close off. So what was I in that plan? I asked. A man humiliated badly enough to make your story get engagement. Stella lifted a hand to her forehead. I didn't think it would go that far. You thought far enough to bring Owen to the venue. She snatched her phone from the table, as if holding it again would let her regain control of the situation. I don't need to listen to you interrogate me anymore. Right then, the screen lit up in her hand. Owen Stewart. Stella froze. I saw the full confusion on her face before she could hide it. She answered, maybe by instinct, maybe because she was afraid that if she didn't, I would only become more suspicious. Owen's voice rang out clearly enough in the silent apartment. Have you gotten the deposit refund yet? I couldn't sleep after the confrontation with Stella. Near dawn, when the city outside my window was still washed in pale gray, I sat up, made a cup of coffee so bitter it dried out my throat, and opened my laptop. This time, I didn't look at the photo again. I looked at the list of everything we'd booked for the wedding. Photographer, florist, catering, band, honeymoon hotel, shuttle service, wedding cake, the sage green table linens Stella had once spent 3 days choosing. Every line on that spreadsheet felt like a brick in the house I had thought I was going to live in for the rest of my life. And that morning, I started taking it apart brick by brick. I called each vendor. My voice hoarse but clear, I didn't give long explanations. I simply said the wedding needed to be put on indefinite hold, and that every payment, refund, deposit, and penalty fee had to be confirmed in writing. No agreements over the phone. No verbal promises. No, we'll review it and get back to you. Unless there was an email attached. Some people hesitated with sympathy. Some kept their voices strictly professional. One person asked, "Are you sure, Mr. Reed?" I looked down at the ring still sitting in my desk drawer and answered, "I'm sure." I called the process on booking my future. It sounded bitter, but it was accurate. I was canceling a future that someone had already canceled. They had just wanted me to keep paying the invoices for it. By late morning, Violet Bennett arrived. She didn't hug me. She didn't ask if I was okay, in that way that forces a person to lie. She set a paper bag with sandwiches on the table, pulled out a chair beside me, and opened her notebook. "Give me every invoice," she said. "What's been paid? What can be refunded? What's gone for good? What came from the joint account? We're going to make every dollar clear." I gave her the spreadsheet password. Violet worked fast, so neatly and efficiently that I felt ashamed remembering how only hours earlier my hands had still been shaking while I typed cancellation emails. She color-coded each amount, noted payment dates, who transferred the money and where it came from. The numbers that had once stood for wedding flowers, live music, and a honeymoon were now turning into evidence. When I stayed silent for too long, Violet looked up. "You didn't destroy the wedding, Gabrielle," she said, her voice as firm as a nail driven into the table. "You're stopping a lie from continuing to come with invoices." The sentence caught in my throat. Not because it was gentle, but because it was true. I had been afraid I would look petty. Afraid people would say I was impulsive, selfish, and cruel for sending the photo to Stella's parents and the venue. But the cost breakdown in front of me spoke a language colder than any explanation. Maturity, sometimes, isn't forgiving right away. Sometimes it's knowing how to turn pain into clear paperwork, so no one can twist the truth. My phone rang while Violet was checking the deposit section for maple and glass, the venue we'd booked. Daisy Perry's name appeared on the screen. I answered, but before I could even say hello, she spoke, her voice tenser than before. "Gabriel, I need to confirm something with you directly. We just received an email requesting a refund of the deposit. I frowned. From me. The sender claimed to be you. But the email address is different from yours by one character. Just one. If you weren't looking carefully, it would be very easy to miss. The room seemed to shrink around me. Violet stopped typing, her eyes fixed on me. I asked slowly, where did they ask the money to be transferred? Daisy inhaled. A new payment account. It doesn't match the original information. I tightened my grip on the phone. Freeze all refund requests. Don't process anything unless I verify it directly by phone and from my original email address. Send me that entire email, including the headers if you can get them. I thought it seemed suspicious, so I haven't processed it. Daisy said. Gabriel, this isn't just a canceled wedding anymore. I looked at Violet. She had already opened a new tab, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. I knew she was thinking of the same name I was. Owen Stewart. But suspicion wasn't enough. I needed proof, and the proof came faster than I expected. As Violet reviewed the joint account, she suddenly stopped at a string of small transactions. $19. $32. $48. Repeated again and again over several weeks. Under bland descriptions like booking fee, DA core accessories, and sample fitting service. Gabriel, Violet said quietly, do you recognize this payment wallet? I leaned down to look. The recipient ID made the hair on the back of my neck go cold. It was linked to Owen Stewart. None of the transactions had been large enough to catch my attention back when I still trusted Stella. But added together, the amount was not small at all. Little by little, money from our joint account had been flowing toward the man in the selfie. The man Stella had called upgraded. I remembered all the times she had smiled lightly and said it was just a dress-fitting fee, a booking hold, an unexpected DA charge. I had believed her. I had even apologized for asking too many questions. I sent the entire bank statement to my personal email, backed it up to a hard drive, and texted Henry Davis. Violet quietly turned on the printer. The sound of paper sliding out sheet by sheet sounded like truth taking physical form. Just as I picked up the first printed statement, my phone rang again. This time, it was the bank. The employee's voice was urgent, but trying to stay calm. Mr. Reed, we need you to come to the branch and verify this immediately. Stella Parker has just requested a large withdrawal from the joint account, citing emergency wedding expenses. I arrived at the bank with Henry Davis on a morning when every sound seemed sharper than usual. The sliding glass doors are opening. Shoes striking the stone floor. The printer at the teller counter. All of it felt like it was stretching the nerves inside my head tight. Henry walked beside me, holding a thin stack of papers, his voice low but steady. Gabriel, remember this. Today, you don't need to win with anger. You just need to let the truth stand upright. I nodded. In my bag was a folder full of confirmation emails, bank statements, screenshots, and the fragments of evidence I had spent last night arranging in order, as if I were trying to piece back together the part of my life that had just been smashed apart. But when I stepped into the private consultation room, I stopped short. Stella Parker was already there. Beside her were Amelia Ross and Ryan Kelly. Ryan sat with his back straight, his hands clasped so tightly that his knuckles had gone white. Amelia looked exhausted, like someone who had spent the whole night crying and still had to gather enough strength to face the morning. And Stella, when she saw me, immediately shifted her gaze into something cold and accusing, as if I were the one who had dragged her into this room, as if I were the one who had ruined everything. I didn't greet her. I just pulled out a chair and sat down. The bank employee gave a brief explanation of the meeting, saying there were several transactions connected to the joint account for wedding expenses that needed to be verified before any refund request or freed changes could proceed. Stella immediately leaned toward the woman, her voice trembling. I need to make something clear. Gabriel is trying to control my finances. He's angry because I wanted to stop before the wedding. So now he's using everything he can to smear me in front of my family. That sentence made Ryan close his eyes. Amelia placed a hand on her handbag, gripping the leather strap tightly. I didn't interrupt. I simply placed the folder on the table and pushed it gently toward the bank employee. She opened it and compared it against the data on her screen. The room was so quiet I could hear Stella swallow. There is a series of small transactions repeated over several weeks, the bank employee said. The amount was not particularly large per transfer, but together, the total is significant. A portion was sent to a digital wallet linked to Owen Stewart. Owen's name dropped into the room like a glass shattering. Stella immediately said, those were wedding expenses. Some outside costs, accessories, alterations, advance payments for services. Do you have invoices? Ryan asked. Stella looked at her mother, then at me. I didn't have time to save them. Only then did I speak, calm enough that it surprised even me. If they were wedding expenses, why was the groom in the payment wallet, Owen? No one said anything. Stella looked at me as though she wanted to slap me with her eyes. But this time, the room was no longer on the side of her tears. In front of her was the bank screen, the numbers, the name Owen Stewart appearing in each transaction line, cold and precise in a way no excuse could be. Ryan slammed his hand down on the table. The sound made Amelia flinch. Enough. Stella, tell the truth. Dage! I'm asking you why. Ryan's voice cracked with anger. Why did you drag Gabriel into this? Why did you drag your mother and me into it? You didn't just hurt Gabriel. You made your parents stand there and bless something you had already been quietly destroying. Amelia turned to her daughter, her eyes red. I don't need you to make it sound pretty. I need you to tell the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Stella began to cry. Tears fell quickly, familiarly, almost right on cue. In the past, the moment she cried, I would soften. I would wonder whether I had been too harsh, whether I hadn't been forgiving enough. But that day, those tears no longer controlled anyone. The door to the consultation room opened just as the air had turned thick and heavy. Owen Stewart walked in. He wore the confidence of a man who thought he had come to rescue someone. Stella lifted her head, and for one very brief moment, I saw hope flash in her eyes. That hope was so painful it almost became pitiful. Owen. Stella called softly. Owen looked around the room, saw me, saw Ryan, saw Amelia, saw the folder on the table. And then his eyes stopped on the bank screen. The confidence on his face drained away quickly, like a tide hitting stone. I came to pick Stella up, he said. I don't think her private business needs to be blown up like this. Ryan shot to his feet. Private business. Money from my daughter and Gabriel's wedding account was transferred into your wallet, and you call that private business. Owen shrugged, his voice turning cold at once. I never forced Stella to send me money. Every transaction was voluntary. If she called it support, a gift, or whatever else, that was between us. I didn't sign any wedding contract. I also didn't ask her to change any terms. Stella looked at him as if someone had just pulled the floor out from under her. Owen, what are you saying? He didn't look at her for long. I'm just telling the truth. Don't drag me into your legal problems. The word, legal, made Stella go rigid. I sat still, feeling none of the satisfaction I once thought I would. All I saw was the naked truth taking shape in front of me. The man Stella had called an upgrade had abandoned her the moment a price began to appear. Owen took a step back, putting distance between himself and all of us. I hope everyone gets this sorted out, he said, then turned and left. Stella sobbed harder, but this time, the sound was no longer a weapon. It sounded like someone who had just realized she was not an exception, only another transaction in someone else's life. I thought everything had hit bottom. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Daisy Perry appeared on the screen. Gabriel, Owen just called the venue. He wants to transfer the wedding date to another girl's name. After the meeting at the bank, my phone started buzzing like someone was trying to break down the door from the outside. Stella texted first, then called, then texted again. I'm sorry. I panicked. I didn't know what I was doing. Owen made me think it wasn't too late. You didn't have to drag my parents into this. Gabriel, you're making me look like the villain in front of everyone. I sat in my car, reading each line under the cold yellow lights of the parking lot. Every message felt like a different version of Stella Parker. One begging. One blaming. One terrified. One furious, because the consequences were no longer in her control. At one point, my finger stopped over the keyboard. I had once loved that woman enough to memorize the way she sighed when she was tired, the way she bit her lip while choosing wedding flowers, the way she laughed when she thought she'd won some tiny argument. But in that moment, love was no longer a strong enough reason for me to step back into the wreckage. I told myself I could feel sorry for someone who was falling apart, but I couldn't let that pity become a license for them to destroy me all over again. The next afternoon, Amelia Ross asked to meet me at a small cafe near the park. She came alone. That surprised me more than any apology could have. Amelia wasn't as carefully made up as she usually was. Her face was tired, but her eyes had stopped searching for ways to defend her daughter with excuses. She placed a cream-colored envelope in front of me. Inside was the blessing letter she had once written for our wedding day. I'm not here to ask you to forgive Stella, she said, her voice hoarse. I'm here to apologize for thinking you were being cruel when all you were doing was trying to protect yourself. I looked at the letter, my throat tightening. In the first few lines, she had written that she was happy Stella had found a man who knew how to keep his word. I folded the letter back up, carefully, as if folding away something that no longer belonged to my future. You were lied to too, I said. Amelia shook her head very slowly. Yes. But that doesn't make it your responsibility to heal us. That sentence silenced me longer than I wanted it to. Because for the first time, someone on Stella's side acknowledged my boundary without trying to erase it. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and stared at the folder that held everything. Screenshots, emails, bank statements, warning files, evidence strong enough to burn down whatever story Stella might try to tell anyone. I had imagined posting it all online. People would be outraged on my behalf. They would call her a cheater. They would dig into Owen Stewart. They would share the post until no one in her family could pretend this had all just been a misunderstanding. The thought had a very dangerous sweetness to it. Violet Bennett called right as I had my cursor hovering over the post button. I told her everything. Violet was quiet for a moment before she said, Gabriel, you have the right to defend yourself, but don't let strangers' satisfaction become the new cage that keeps you trapped. I just want her to stop lying. Then keep the evidence for the lawyer, for the bank, for anyone who needs the truth. But don't turn your pain into a performance for a crowd. I didn't answer. Violet went on, her voice softer now. A clean victory isn't always loud. Sometimes it's walking away while you're still decent enough to realize you don't need to destroy anyone anymore. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I closed the folder. That wasn't forgiveness. It was the choice not to let Stella decide who I would become after she betrayed me. The next morning, Daisy Perry from the venue called. Her voice was more cautious than usual, as if she was afraid every sentence might touch a wound that hadn't closed yet. Gabriel, there's a portion of the fee that's non-refundable. I know this isn't easy to hear, but we have a proposal. I closed my eyes, bracing myself for one more loss. Daisy said the venue sometimes supported small community events. Part of my fee could be turned into a fundraiser for couples facing financial crisis before their wedding day, or for families who simply needed a modest ceremony to hold on to a little dignity during hard times. I let out a very quiet laugh, not because I was happy, but because life really did have a strange way of placing a small door right in the middle of the rubble. I don't want to turn this into some display of nobility, I said. I understand, Daisy replied. It's just, maybe that day doesn't have to remain only a stain. That sentence stayed with me all day. By afternoon, I called back and agreed. Not because I was fine. Not because I wanted people to praise me for being kind. I just didn't want the day that had once been meant for promising a marriage to end as dead money and a humiliation lying still on an invoice. That night, for the first time in days, my apartment was truly quiet. No calls from Ryan Kelly. No long messages from Amelia. No vague threats from Owen. I thought everything had finally begun to sink beneath the surface. Then my phone lit up. A single message from Stella. Gabriel, Owen wasn't the first man I brought to the venue. I read Stella Parker's final message one more time before locking the screen. The words were still there, trembling and sharp, as if the moment I touched them, they would drag me right back into the old spiral, where I had to ask, had to hurt, had to prove I loved her enough to be wounded all over again. But this time, I didn't reply. I took screenshots of the entire message thread and sent them to Amelia Ross and Ryan Kelly. No accusations attached. No long-winded explanation. I only wrote, "You should hear the rest from Stella. I'm not taking part in this anymore." After I sent it, I set my phone down on the table and went back to signing the last of the paperwork. The joint account was closed. The wedding services were confirmed canceled. The remaining deposits were separated clearly according to each person's responsibility. I checked every line, every email, every receipt, calm to a degree that even I found strange. Maybe people only truly take back control of their lives when they stop begging for explanations from the person who deliberately broke them apart. At noon, Henry Davis called me. His voice was more serious than usual. "Gabriel, I just verified more about the man before Owen Stewart." I said nothing. Henry continued, slowly, as if every word might hurt me more. That man hadn't been in some deep love affair. Not some sudden, overwhelming infatuation. He had only been a link in the warped little loyalty test Stella had once bragged about to a few acquaintances. She wanted to see whether I was strong enough to win her back. She wanted to know if, when she pushed me away, I would panic, get jealous, chase after her like a man being challenged. I sat still for a long time after that call. So, Owen hadn't been the beginning. The upgraded Selfie hadn't been the only moment everything collapsed. It was only the final sound of glass breaking in a house that had been cracked for a long time. Stella had treated love like a stage, and I had been dragged onto it without ever knowing I was supposed to perform. She had confused being loved with being fought over, commitment with power, a future husband with an audience expected to applaud every one of her insecurities. The next afternoon, I agreed to meet Stella one last time at a small cafe near downtown. I chose a public place, not to humiliate her, but so neither of us would have the chance to turn the conversation into another private tug of war. Stella arrived a few minutes late. She looked exhausted. The defiance from that selfie was gone. So was the confidence of someone who thought she could control every emotion around her. She sat down across from me, both hands wrapped tightly around a glass she hadn't drunk from. "Gabriel," she said, her voice hoarse. "I know I was wrong, but you have to understand, I was scared. I was scared that after we got married, everything would become boring. You're always stable, always kind, always calm. Sometimes I didn't know if you still desired me. I looked at her. The woman I had once planned to marry was still there, but the image of her inside me had changed completely. I no longer saw someone who needed me to save her from her fear. I saw someone who had used her fear to justify pushing me into pain. I placed the ring on the table. Stella looked at it like she was watching a door close. "I don't hate you enough to stay trapped in this," I said. "But I don't love you in a way that requires me to betray myself either." Her tears fell. Before, all it took was seeing Stella cry, and I would soften. I would wonder if I was being too harsh, if I was hurting the person I loved. But that day, I understood that tears are not always an invitation to return. Sometimes they are only the final sound of a consequence arriving just in time. I stood first. "I hope you truly live differently," I said. "But that part doesn't belong to me anymore." I left the cafe with my chest still aching, but the pain no longer had ropes tied to it. It was only a wound beginning to close. The wedding did not happen. A few days later, Amelia and Ryan sent me one final message. Amelia apologized for not seeing her daughter more clearly. Ryan said he was ashamed of what had happened and thanked me for not turning everything into a cruel public act of revenge. I read it, replied briefly that I wished their family peace, and then left that conversation behind me. Stella disappeared from the circle of my life. No longer my fiancée. No longer someone I had to protect from the consequences she had created for herself. No longer a name that made every morning begin with the feeling that I couldn't breathe. I used the remaining money to move into a smaller apartment with fewer memories. I rearranged my desk, changed my account passwords, scheduled therapy, and started running again early in the mornings. Those things sound ordinary to the point of dullness, but to me, they felt like the first bricks of a new house. I still believe in kindness. It's just that now, I understand kindness does not mean giving other people the freedom to hurt me. I still believe in love. It's just that now, love has to come with boundaries, clear finances, accountable trust, and maturity from both people. The small charity event at the venue still took place quietly that weekend. There were no wedding flowers of mine, no vows, and no Stella walking down the aisle we had once chosen. Instead, meals were sent to families in need, and part of the cost was donated to a local community fund. I didn't go there to stand in the middle of the place that had once been my dream. But Violet Bennett sent me a simple photo. Several white tables, volunteers smiling, and a message that said, "At least part of the loss went somewhere right." I looked at the photo for a very long time. For the first time in days, I exhaled without feeling like my chest was weighed down with stone. I used to think I was canceling a wedding, canceling a future, canceling the happiest version of my life. I used to imagine that pressing cancel on every service, every plan, every promise would turn me into a failure. But after everything, I understand that unbooking my future does not mean losing the future. It means taking back the right to write it from the beginning.